changes are genuine. The story is not. Separating the two is the whole of the book's purpose. The temptation to merge these phenomena is understandable. Each of them is dynamic. Each has been in the news. Each carries a whiff of the uncontrollable. When the North Magnetic Pole began sliding across the Arctic faster than at any time in the modern record, when navigation agencies had to update their global models ahead of schedule, when headlines announced that the field might be about to flip, it was easy to reach for a grander narrative, that the planet is destabilizing on every front at once, and that magnetic drift is the hidden trigger for the rest. That narrative is emotionally coherent. It is also, on the evidence, wrong. To keep the argument honest, the book holds to a simple discipline throughout, and it is worth stating plainly here so the reader can hold the author to it. Every claim is sorted into one of three registers. The first is verified science, findings that rest on a broad, replicated, peer-reviewed evidence base, and that the relevant scientific institutions, NASA, NOAA, the United States Geological Survey, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, regard as established. The second is plausible hypothesis, ideas that are serious, that have some evidence behind them, but that remain open questions on which reasonable specialists still disagree. The third is speculation, claims that reach past the current evidence, whether they come from the frontier of research or from outside science altogether. The book will tell you, as it goes, which register a given statement belongs to, and it will state the mainstream position beside any claim that departs from it. This is not a debunking book, or not only that. Debunking treats its subject as an enemy to be defeated, and it tends to flatten real uncertainty in its hurry to reassure. The Earth's systems are genuinely complicated, and honesty about what we do not yet understand is part of the scientific attitude, not a retreat from it. Where the science is unsettled, the precise causes of the mid-Pleistocene transition, the exact behavior of the field during a reversal, the reach of solar variability into the climate, the book says so, and resists the urge to substitute a confident story for an incomplete one. The goal is not to trade a frightening certainty for a comforting one. It is to replace certainty of either kind with understanding. The book is arranged in 4 parts and a close. Part Y takes up the magnetic field, what it is, why its poles wander, how reversals and excursions actually work, and what the data does not show. Part 2 turns to climate as its own system, human-caused warming, natural variability, and the deep ice age rhythm that is the book's most important conceptual chapter. Part the 3rd examines 3 Earth systems repeatedly folded into the pole shift story, volcanoes, the sun, and cultural traditions such as the Hopi prophecies. Part 4 is about pseudoscience itself, how it reasons, a case study in the cataclysmic pole shift hypothesis, and a practical guide to reading sources. The final chapter gathers the threads and states, as clearly as the author can manage, what a calm and accurate picture of a dynamic Earth looks like. A reader who finishes with greater clarity, less fear, and a sharper sense of the difference between what is known, what is plausible, and what is merely dramatic will have taken from the book exactly what was put into it. Introduction. In the closing weeks of 2018, the scientists who maintain the world's master map of the magnetic field did something they had never done on this schedule before. The World Magnetic Model, the mathematical description of the field that sits invisibly inside the navigation systems of ships, aircraft, submarines, and the mapping application on nearly every phone, is revised on a fixed 5-year cycle. The version then in service had been issued in 2015 and was not due for replacement until 2020, but the North Magnetic Pole had been moving so quickly and in such an unexpected direction that the model had drifted out of tolerance ahead of time. The agencies responsible, the United States National Centers for Environmental Information and the British Geological Survey, prepared an out-of-cycle update to correct it. The pole's behavior was the reason. For most of the 20th century, the North Magnetic Pole had ambled across the Canadian Arctic at a modest pace, a few kilometers a year. Then, over recent decades, it accelerated until it was racing across the top of the world toward Siberia at tens of kilometers per year, faster than at any time in the era of careful measurement. This is a real phenomenon, well documented, and genuinely a little strange. It is exactly the kind of fact that ought to make a curious person want to understand what is going on beneath their feet. Instead, for a large and growing audience, it became something else, the opening line of an apocalypse. Within the ecosystem of online video, podcasts, and social media that has grown up around what its participants call Earth changes, the accelerating pole did not stay a problem in geophysics. It was fused to a much larger story. The magnetic field, the argument went, is weakening toward a sudden reversal. That reversal will strip away the planet's protection from solar and cosmic radiation. The sun is entering a dangerous phase. The crust itself may lurch. Yellowstone may erupt. The climate is not warming from human causes at all, but convulsing under this cosmic stress. And ancient traditions, from the Hopi to the Norse, foretold the whole thing. In this telling, the wandering pole is not a curiosity. It is the master switch of a global catastrophe, and the mainstream institutions that say otherwise are either blind or lying. It is a powerful story. It has the shape of the oldest stories we tell: hidden knowledge, gathering signs, an establishment that will not listen, a reckoning at hand. It takes a scattering of real, unsettling facts. The pole really is moving, the field really is changing, the climate really is shifting, Yellowstone really is a supervolcano, and binds them with a single causal thread into something that feels, to the person encountering it, like a pattern suddenly snapping into focus, and it offers the particular comfort that conspiracy always offers, the sense of being among the few who see clearly. This book takes that story seriously enough to take it apart, not with mockery, which persuades no one, and not by pretending the underlying phenomena are not real, because they are. It takes it apart by doing the one thing the catastrophe narrative cannot survive, examining each of its pieces on its own terms with the actual evidence, and asking whether the causal threads that supposedly connect them exist. They do not. What exists instead is something more interesting and far less terrifying. A set of distinct planetary systems, each dynamic, each with its own mechanisms and its own timescales, that the human mind is very prone to mistake for a single coordinated machine. The central claim of this book can be stated in one sentence, and everything that follows is an effort to earn it. The Earth's magnetic field, its climate, and its geological activity are all real, all changing, and all largely independent of one another, and the evidence does not support merging them into one apocalypse. Magnetic drift is real. Geomagnetic reversals are real and have happened hundreds of times in the planet's history. Human-caused climate change is real. The Ice Age cycles are real. The sun varies. Yellowstone is a genuine supervolcano. Every one of these statements is true. The error, and it is a specific, identifiable error, not a vague failure of open-mindedness, lies in the wiring diagram that connects them. The assumption that because several systems are dynamic, they must be dynamically linked, and that because a change is large, it must be a catastrophe on a human timescale. Consider what the wiring diagram requires. It requires that changes in the magnetic field drive changes in surface weather and climate, a link that the physics does not provide and the data does not show, as NASA and others have stated directly. It requires that a magnetic reversal be a sudden, near instantaneous event that flips the planet and exposes it to lethal radiation. When the geological record shows reversals unfolding over centuries to millennia, with the field weakening but never vanishing, and no reliable signature of mass extinction attached to them. It requires that solar activity, rather than greenhouse gases, explains modern warming, a claim that the measured trends in solar output and temperature flatly contradict. It requires that Yellowstone's eruptions be triggered by magnetic shifts when they are driven by a hotspot and a magma system with no plausible connection to the field. Each link, examined alone, dissolves. The narrative holds together only as long as no single joint is inspected too closely. That inspection is the work of this book, and it is organized to make the pieces easy to hold apart. Part 1 is about the magnetic field itself, the difference between geographic and magnetic north, why the poles move, what reversals and excursions really are, and crucially, what the data does not show. Part 2 is about climate, treated as a wholly separate system, the well-established finding that human greenhouse gas emissions drive current warming, the honest and often underappreciated role of natural variability and solar minima, and the deep rhythm of the ice ages, including the still unsolved puzzle of why that rhythm changed roughly 1 million years ago. Part 3 takes up 3 subjects the catastrophe story loves to absorb: Yellowstone and supervolcano fear, solar activity and space weather, and the cultural and mythic material that gets read as prophecy and returns each to its proper context. Part 4 steps back to the reasoning itself, what pseudoscience is as a pattern of thought, a close case study of the cataclysmic pole shift hypothesis and its modern popularizers, and a practical guide to weighing sources so the reader can do this work without the author. A word about tone, because it is the easiest thing to get wrong in a book like this. It is tempting, when writing against a frightening and false story, to reassure, to pat the reader on the shoulder and say that everything is fine. But everything is not simply fine. The climate is changing in ways that matter, the field's behavior over the coming centuries is genuinely uncertain, and a serious solar storm could do real damage to the electrical grid. The point is not that the Earth is placid. The point is that its genuine risks are specific, are studied by people who understand them, and bear almost no resemblance to the cosmic convulsion of the pole shift narrative. Calm is not the same as complacency. The aim is to see the planet clearly, dynamic, ancient, indifferent, and not on any evidence we possess about to end. The reader who comes to this book already convinced that a pole shift is imminent is unlikely to be argued out of it by a single volume, and that is not quite the goal. The goal is to lay the evidence out fairly enough and the reasoning plainly enough that a person willing to look can see where the real science ends and the story begins. That line is not always where either the alarmists or the reflexive skeptics would put it. Finding it, patiently, without drama, one system at a time, is what the rest of this book is for.